All right, BJ Bethel, welcome to your podcast. My name is Ruben J. Everybody who don't know me.
I have a podcast.
Oh gosh,
I don't want anybody tell me these things.
It's unnamed too, which is what I love. It like right now, I created an email address for us, just so that we can have it just in case, and I'm just calling it BJ Bethel Project. So BJ Bethel Project at gmail.com.
Kind of like the Alan Parsons Project.
Yeah,
the 2025 project, the the Tennessee Valley Project.
There's a lot of projects,
not nearly as important. Yeah, I mean the clean up my garage project, which is a massive failure at this point. Well, Ruben, it's great to be with you, man. It's been a while.
It's been a minute. So BJ, for those who don't know, is a seasoned reporter, both in I'm going to call it hard news as well as wrestling business, so we got a lot to talk about, a lot of stuff to cover. And so if you have questions in the future, always hit us up on Twitter. He's at BJ Bethel Tweets. I'm at the Ruben J. You can send us questions there or at BJ Bethel Project at gmail.com. I'll be checking that often. The other thing to note for those who are listening or watching this is we don't know when we're going to do this again. We don't have a schedule yet. We haven't really talked.
It depends on you when we do this again.
Exactly. You, the listeners, not you as in me.
Yes.
The plan right now that we have is just as stuff breaks, we're going to come on here and discuss it, and so if there's a podcast feed, subscribe to it. If not, subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then do we have a Substack that we want to direct people to?
Yeah, right now Substack's bbethel.substack.com. I already have a bunch of audio interviews with one of them's wrestling oriented, but a lot of them cover sports and news and NFL draft last April, Pete Rose's eligibility for the Hall of Fame. If you want to check that out, I also have some stories there. And as usual, you can always check my stuff at SE Scoops. And if you Google around, you'll find the other stuff I've written for news and sports agencies for the last bazillion years.
When I said seasoned reporter, I meant seasoned reporter.
Yeah. If you can't tell by the gray coming in, he's getting way too seasoned.
a little more salt, a little less pepper.
Yeah. I don't like that too much, but
hey, if you look closely at me, I'm 32 and you can see some salt and pepper in my hair. So
that's when it started happening to me, Bubba. Watch out.
Well, BJ, it was a big weekend for WWE and All Elite Wrestling, and we are going to dive into this, and we're going to start out with talking about AEW's biggest show of the year, which, I always thought that Double or Nothing was going to be considered their like WrestleMania, and it seems like All In has become the WrestleMania since they bought the Ring of Honor and bought the rights to All In. Let me start out with this. Your thoughts on it coming to the States as opposed to being out in the UK. What are your thoughts on that? Because that seemed to me, personally, was a kind of a move out of left field considering the pattern that Tony Khan had. But obviously, he's changed that pattern, even with Double or Nothing, changing that venue as well. So thoughts on All In coming to the States?
Well, All In started as a one-time shot at, everybody remembers this story. Dave Meltzer said an indie show could never draw 10,000 people in the United States, and Cody Rhodes tweeted him back, bet. And then him and the Young Bucks put together the money. They put together a show in Chicago. It was under Ring of Honor. They owned Ring of Honor did all the production, even though it was Cody and Matt and Nick Jackson's show. They owned the copyright, and then AEW kind of adopted the name with the All Out show, which didn't Double or Nothing seemed like the two big ones. It was kind of interesting because they really didn't have a big major one over the four they had. They just kind of went by the quarter, which was enjoyable because it gave time to build up and you didn't get pay-per-view fatigue. But I know, obviously, they decided to bring back the All In moniker for the Wembley show because it was just historic. And I think it's worked. They've all gone well. I think bringing it back out of Wembley, I'll be interested to see. I think they don't want to wear that they don't want to wear that market out with it. So this was probably a wise move. You put it in the middle of the United States where a lot of people can travel and get to it. And obviously it drew well. WrestleTix, I think, had it at 25,600 around that time, about 2 hours before the show started. I think Tony Khan during the press conference hinted it might have been higher. I think he maybe said around 30,000, but maybe that's with, I don't know. I'm going to get the number. Only close to an official number I saw was from WrestleTix. It was 25,671. So obviously it was a success. They had a lot of counter programming to it. WWE was running shows hard against it all weekend. This is going to be their strategy for a while. They've done this on and off, either to try to hit them in the ratings or hit them in buy rates or hit them, whatever show it is they're doing, they're trying to counter program. Obviously TKO wants to monopolize the market, and they're flooding the zone with wrestling. So, despite that, I think by far they had the best show of the weekend. I thought the Women's Evolution show looked really good. Seemed to be fantastic. Fans were raving about it. I didn't get to see all the matches from it, but I think it was probably their best match quality pay-per-view this year. But I don't know how long WWE can maintain that. But as far as AEW All In goes, I think it was probably a good idea. You have one moniker for a stadium show. It's already got a historic connotation for the largest indie show ever ran. Even have a plaque at the arena in Chicago, memorializing that show. So for these big major stadium shows, maybe moving to different continents, I think it's a good idea. Give people a different chance to see things. And I thought this show lived up to it. It was a really good show.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but great things from All In. Obviously there's some news that we're going to talk about in here in a little bit as well that broke from that. The big story out of All In right now for me is they have a new champion. Adam Hangman Page defeated John Moxley in the main event in a Texas death match. There was some great stuff that happened there, and I have some thoughts myself, but I want to throw to you real quick. Well, actually, before we jump to that, I do want to say this. I do want to ask you this, because the one thing that I see constantly about AEW is Dynamite and Collision just they're struggling to draw a crowd. And I think they're getting better. I think for some reason they come out here to LA and they sell out. Anywhere else, it seems like they're getting half arenas. They've downsized their arenas recently. So my question to you is, why do you think their pay-per-views consistently sell out or come close to sell out when they're not able to get a TV audience in the building?
Well, they have been getting, their TV audiences have been selling out, but they're also running much smaller arenas now. They're running 2,000 seat places versus the 12,000 seat, 10,000 seat, 8,000 seat places they ran when the company started. I don't know the issue with the gates. I think they would probably be stronger now than a year ago. The ratings are stronger. Even the pay-per-view gates have been stronger. Just creatively, the company's humming better. But I would think that I think there's just a lot of competition out there. I think COVID affects it. I think WWE's got such a loyal fan base across the country that for them, gates, they're kind of more along the lines of where every show's an event. And I think with AEW, because they don't really market locally a lot, they don't spend a lot of money doing that. It's kind of like we're just moving to your city to film a TV episode. And, maybe they'll start trying to run bigger places again. Maybe they'll have more success, but I think a lot of it was just creatively, they were on a downswing and that lost a lot of interest. I think there's just also a lot of competition out there. When AEW started, there wasn't, there was a lot of competition. You had Raw, you had NXT, but then that just moved over they moved that over to USA Network to compete. SmackDown's out there. And then you had a period where there was COVID. So when that came back, people were anxious to get in arenas. WWE saw like a bump out. Their creative turn in WWE happened like a year after that. And they've kind of been riding it high. Their gates are getting a little lower now, but because they've been riding so high for 2 years. But I don't know. It's interesting because you got all these new things and new media. You have streaming. You have all these different entertainment options now. People don't seem to be as willing to leave the house since COVID, but that hasn't affected WWE, hasn't affected the NFL, hasn't affected, a lot of, some other sports. So what the difference is, I have no idea. I think creatively AEW struggling for a while really killed off its gate beat. I think it really killed off its gates, but right now they adjusted. They went to smaller rooms. The crowds are better in the smaller rooms. That seems to help, built, because the audience really is a character in these things.
Mhm.
And I think it's definitely, I think that's shown. And obviously the pay-per-views are selling well. Look at the crowd they had this weekend.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the smaller arenas because I think, if you're seeing consistently selling, you know, 2,000, 2,000 seats. Hold on one second. It says, sorry, I got a notification on there. I think we're good. If you're seeing a trend that you're consistently selling out 2,000 seats, 3,000 seats in a 10,000 seat venue, in my head, the smart thing to do is to go to a 5,000 seat venue and make that building seem fuller.
Yeah.
Because it ends up being a better experience on television. And you can tell that there were times where like Cope would come out and you can kind of see like he's not all into coming out, no pun intended. He's not into coming out like he used to because the arena's half empty. He's playing to half of the arena, and then you see the smaller arenas where it's full and he's actually, the wrestlers are actually getting, energized by it. So it's good to see. It's good to see. And hopefully they can keep it up. And I know their TV are up quite a bit from this time last year as well.
Yeah, they're doing a lot better. I mean, the Grand Arena Mexico show, I was really well. It was in the mid 700s, which a lot of people say, well, that's not like the millions that they're getting. It's not 1.1 like SmackDown or 1.3 they usually get. But I mean, those days are changing. I mean, since those million rate, since those 1.1, 1.2 ratings per show was in 2019, 2020. Later, I mean, since then, TBS, TNT, they've lost maybe half their homes. So that's a big difference. That's something, and this is what's funny, and this is something that people kept talking to me about when AEW was getting their TV deal, is that they're still a massive TV success. They're still in the top 5 every week, sometimes number 1. And people don't seem to understand that, because how the industry views it and how regular fans view things is sometimes 180 degrees from how the wrestling internet views things.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think people who comment on a lot of this stuff don't understand the television business, don't understand the entertainment business. Like 20 years ago, 500,000 viewers, 700,000 viewers probably wouldn't keep you on the air, but now you're considered a huge show if you get 500,000 people to tune in, especially if it's live. So the business is different, and people look at WWE doing, pretty decent numbers and think, why isn't AEW doing that? AEW is doing just fine for the audience we have.
Their ratings have slid a bit too. But it's like the same. USA Network is going through the same change, and Netflix, their numbers on Netflix are really far down. They have a lot of challenges on Netflix just because of the nature of how that streaming app works. The demos for Netflix are not very friendly to WWE. It's like 60-40 female and subscribers. The economics, the way it stretches, the economic demographics aren't in their favor. That's probably one reason why they wanted to get WWE, was to add more of a male-dominated working class audience, which was good, but those numbers haven't been nearly what they used, when they started on the app. But that deal is so long. There's 4.5 more years to it. So the entire media landscape is going to change 4 or 5 times by then. So it may be a genius deal by then. It may be a terrible deal by then. But, so far, they always seem to be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and I think for WWE, they're going to get their money. And then, regardless of if Netflix exercises their clause to exit or not, I think WWE is going to be just fine. All in. New champion, Hangman Adam Page defeated Jon Moxley in a gruesome match. Full disclosure, I have not seen the whole match. I have seen many clips of the match. I have some thoughts of what I've seen, but I want to throw to you first. Get your thoughts on the main event and some of the surprises that were in that.
The thing that really interested me in this show was how over the returning AEW wrestlers were. The Guns were very over. Darby was very over. I mean, some of the people in the Casino Gauntlet matches were very over. These weren't free agents coming in from WWE for their big AEW moment. These were the guys that are on their roster. That really surprised me, but it also showed like Juice Williams was back. It also showed me that, man, this roster is really over and they've done a good job of managing it. And they've kind of won the crowd back. They kind of have their trust in the creative process again. The run-ins at the end I thought were well timed. This was an old-fashioned gang war storyline. It's like the Four Horsemen. It's like the NWO. It's like it's like having Rob Van Dam and Sabu with Lawler. Where they're just trying to decimating people, and it's that kind of had to be the finish. The Texas Death Match finish gives them that ability to have all the run-ins and stuff. A lot of people compared it to Rhodey versus Roman 2 years ago. And it was kind of like that, but I think the Roman Cody finish, I think, was kind of inspired by the Double or Nothing 2021 when they had Adam Cole and Bryan Danielson basically debut at the same time, to fight each other against the two top stables at that time. So, it's just an old fashioned gang war. They needed everybody to get involved. In the storyline in the company is Swerve and Hangman. Those are the two most over guys. That's the protagonists. Those are the franchises. Those are the guys. That's where the focus needs to be. They're the most over. They're the two stars of the company, and they were still the focus. And I just got to say, John Moxley has just done a tremendous job helping get this creative thing back and to get together. Like just being this over, psycho heel, who talks and, kind of gives you hints of what's going to happen and just air you to, get this belt back. I don't think you have the guts for it. I don't like this company right now. I'm going to tear it up and down and apart, and then you got the Bucks playing their part where they're this cowardly heels. They don't really want to listen to Moxley, but they're scared not to, which helps get him further over. I mean, he's had some good matches. He's played the role right. Marina Shafir's been great. So is Wheeler Yuta. It's been fantastic. I don't think there's enough credit for him. I think this was one of the best main events they had in a long time. I mean, I'm not a fan of all the blood. I think in this case, maybe it probably helped get the emotion of it over better. Plus, I think that Tony likes the big hardcore match finished, how it used to be in the 80s with the territories where, we're going to finish this feud in barbed wire. We're going to finish this feud in a cage. And I thought it was a really successful main event. And Paige is he's just a great baby face. Just so over. He can just communicate. He's one of the best wrestlers in the world. Swerve's right there with him. Those two guys are amazing. And Mox was just amazing. I thought it was a really good main event. And seeing Danielson was great. It was funny because, the day before he was, he did the run-in with the Blue Panther mask. And which was kind of a crazy tease. They had Darby's little promo that he filmed on Mount Everest. And then the next thing you know, this guy in sweats with the Blue Panther mask is in the ring. And the day before, they were talking, I think it was Tony Schiavone and Danielson were talking about how, WWE sent Danielson a request asking him not to do the yes chant. And he kind of went through how ridiculous this is. He goes, I'm not actually chanting anything. I'm just pointing in the air. What are you going to say? I can't point in the air anymore? I mean, yeah, it's the fans chanting. What are you going to do? Sue all the fans? And then the first thing he does when he gets in there is, yes, yeah, he starts pointing, and it's like, okay, that might have been a little bit of a shot, but his interference was great. He looked like he was in really good shape. Darby, he coming back and going right off the top rope into the crowd. It was really good stuff, I thought.
Yeah, so here's the funny part. So I had heard Danielson talk about the yes chant before, and he actually said that Vince asked him not to do it. And at the time, this was like when he first joined AEW, he said, yeah, I won't do the yes chant. Like, I respect you enough to not do the yes chant. Obviously, a lot of things have changed since then, and I don't think he has the same love and respect for McMahon as he probably did, 4 years ago. But I saw him doing that. I saw the clip of that, and I was like, no pun intended. I was like, yes, this is incredible. The crowd was into it, and that's what I love to see is when the crowd is into it. And so, and as
they
far
were
as
into this whole. Did you think they seemed to be really into this whole show? They were buying everything for the most part.
Yeah, it was good. It felt like to me from the clips that I saw, it felt like to me like Double or Nothing in 2019 did. So I was lucky enough to be one of the invited. I'm not going to say journalists because I'm not a journalist, but one of the invited people to cover the show and do some interviews. And the energy in that building was electric, and it was something special. And I felt like that energy is back with this show, with this all-in show. I felt the same energy from the clips that I saw. It's a different mindset. And then I also would go to the theaters and watch AEW in theater. I don't know if they're still doing that, but the crowd in those rooms were electric as well, And so I like seeing the crowd on television into what's going on television. Now, the one thing that I will say about AEW that I wish, and I know I'm going to get some hate for this, I wish they would tone down some of the violence. I wish that they would do things that are a little bit more realistic when it comes to these hardcore matches, because hitting somebody over the head with a bat made out of nails, or suplexing somebody into a bed made out of nails, in my opinion, would be a career ender. That's something that you do to put somebody out on the shelf permanently. And now we've seen this, I think, 3 or 4 times on AEW programming. And
I think a lot of the. Oh, sorry. Keep going.
No. And this is my last thought on it. It's just to me, it takes me out of the moment of, oh my gosh, this is a blood feud, to like, wait, I know this is scripted. Why are they trying to kill each other? Like, that just, to me, in an actual scripted television show, someone's trying to kill them. It's very much possible that character dies. In AEW and WWE, you want to beat the living hell out of each other, but you're not actually trying to kill the person. And so that's just my thought. I wish that AEW would pull some of that back a little bit and make it a little bit more realistic, and or at least use it a little bit more sparingly, so that way I'm not thinking about, oh, this is like the 3rd time they've done this in the last 6 months.
Yeah. I don't know how much of the stuff they're using is gimmicked and really doing this, and then they're bleeding with it. I mean, there was a lot of blood. Moxley was bleeding all over the place. But I don't know how much of it was gimmick, so I can't really say. But I will say this: they really crossed the line with me during this last Swerve Hangman match in the cage, where he's drinking his blood, and then they give an unprotected chair shot, which was supposedly a gimmicked chair, but that's still I mean, and even the crowd you can hear just going, ugh, like, just what's going on. I think a lot of that's just over enthusiasm on the part of the wrestlers. But I think it's also Tony's job to say, okay, let's not get a little too far out there. I think for Mox, he just loves that kind of match. I mean, if you can find ways to do it safe, it's one thing. I know a lot of guys tell me the reason why older wrestlers start doing hardcore is because it's safer than taking all the bumps and stuff you would in a regular match. But I don't, when I do think some of that takes takes you out of the storytelling of the match a little bit. It doesn't, I mean, Moxley and Hangman can perfectly do a main event match together and still have the same stakes involved. They're good, and Moxley trained with Les Thatcher. He's a top-notch psychologist in the ring. Hangman's probably top 5 in the world right now. Like, they can tell that kind of match. And I'd like to see less of that type of wrestling too. I mean, like, I don't know how much of it, I don't know how much they manage the gimmick. I don't know how much they don't. I mean, you sit at Ben Nels, it's like, I mean, you remember seeing the CZW days and days back in the early 2000s where everybody was trying to top ECW, and you just saw guys catching themselves on fire all the time or falling off rafters and buildings. And it's like, I don't want to see that. To me, it's just not that entertaining. But I mean, in a little bit of doses, it's right. This match didn't go nearly as far as a Swerve Hangman match did in the cage, which to me was way too far. I didn't enjoy it one bit. But which is the only time I've really.
Was that in LA?
It might have been. I can't remember where it was at. I just know that there was at one point where they were just lowering and opening the cage. There was just a lot of stuff. It was really not wrestling to me. And that one really turned me off. And I think they wanted to get over how much these guys hated each other. And to me, it's like, I mean, I think there's other ways you can do that, without, drinking the other one's blood, which I thought was kind of gross. But I guess it got over on social media, maybe one of the reasons, but I don't know why. I don't like that kind of match. It was a little, I didn't like the bed of nails, but at the same time, I don't know how gimmicked it is. I don't know what the guys goes playing in. Wrestling is all about deception in a lot of ways. It's making people believe you're hurt when you're not. But as we'll talk about later, there's definitely serious, injuries that happen with this. This isn't ballet, as Jim Ross fondly says, but yeah, I didn't like it either. I wish they would do less the hardcore style stuff, but if you're going to do it safe and look like nobody got hurt. So
Yeah, and that's a good thing. Is like, hey, as long as no one gets hurt, like okay, I can understand doing it, but I think like it really needs to be so for example, I remember the Triple H Shawn Michaels feud back in like 2004 2005 that ended in a Hell in a Cell match, and that got violent and bloody, and I'm like, that to me is the way that you do it. It's something that happens once every couple of years. It's a blood feud. I mean, and I think if anything, the Adam Page Moxley match may have called for it had they not done it 3 months ago, and had they not done it 6 months ago as
yeah,
well.
I mean, this was their second time this is their second time having this exact match,
Yeah,
and the finish was the same, which I guess it kind of calls back that, but at the same time though, it's like, how much farther are you going to have to push it? We got the bed of nails, we got the buckshot on the bed of nails, we got suplexes, we got, I just think after a while, you kind of, maybe it's a once a year thing,
yeah,
if you're really going to blow off a feud, do it like that. And to me, I think the territory guys had that right. Like if you're going to do that and you're going to have a lot of blood, you got to really kind of do it sparingly. And I mean, they have been doing it they have been doing it much less frequently. There's a lot less blood on TV. I think that might be a call from Warner Brothers Discovery too. But yeah, I just I thought it was a great match. To me, it's just like when two guys are that good and they can do things without it. Why have it?
yeah, yeah. No, 100%, 100%. There was I don't remember what match it was at their last pay-per-view they did out here in LA, but it was a cage match, and the cage match ended in something that was a wild ending, and it was one of those things where it sucked the energy out of the building. Like it didn't actually enhance the finish in the building, but it went over great on social media. Like, so I think part of it too is I think they're playing to two different audiences. They're playing for whoever's watching the show live in the venue versus also getting social media buzz. And I think a lot of that too comes down to that earned media concept of just like being in the headlines and being trending and all that stuff. But to me, it's like, I know you guys are trained professionals, but ending a match like that is going to be taking some years off your body. It's like we've seen that over and over again.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And for sure. So let's jump over to the other big show of the weekend, Saturday night's main event. I know we wanted to discuss Goldberg's retirement, losing to Gunther in the main event there. Again, full disclosure, I'm still in the middle of finishing that match. Somehow a 4-minute match is taking me 3 hours to watch. But Goldberg's done. I heard nothing but great things about the match. I know you had some thoughts on Goldberg and his career, so please take the floor.
It's crazy to me that in 2025 he's still main eventing shows on network TV. Even this was his last match. And they drew 9,000 for that. But the funny thing is that when you see his career and everything that's happened, and obviously the Bret Hart injury plays a big part into it. It just feels like he never reached his full potential, even though he's managed to be a draw for, 4 decades. And I think a lot of that goes to just how over he was as a character in WCW, the silent kind of killer guy. They really try to develop him as almost like an MMA style fighter where he comes down, they got more show offish as it went. But to me, I just think it shows a lot. But it's also like if WCW would have really just taken him on the road and allowed him to do 10, 15-minute matches and learn how to work better. He did that in WWE for a while, but I don't think he ever really reached his potential. And I think because of the WCW schedule, he was probably really beat up by then. Bischoff Eric Bischoff, I think, said he didn't think Bill could ever, because he's so fast twitch and explosive, he was never going to be able to do the 10-15 minute match thing every night, which was one reason. Maybe I don't know if I don't know if that's what he meant. He said this in terms of a Jericho Goldberg match on pay-per-view. But it's just remarkable what a draw he is and how he just still captures people, you know. And it's funny because, you know, he was the most, I mean, WWE did everything to parody and slander this guy when he was on the other side. But man, they've really gone out of their way to present him as something special in the years since. And, you know, seems to be a really good guy. I know he's a big car collector. He had his Chevelle, he's 70 Chevelle on the show last week. But, you know, it's going to be interesting. I think he's got a really mixed legacy. But you know, this is a guy who kind of, he was just like the big bright explosion in the sky he was the finale of the fireworks. He came out, he did his thing. He had these great feats of athleticism, you know, doing these moves to 500-600 pound people while doing backflips and, you know, being so explosive. I don't think there was rarely an athlete like him during that time. So, you know, it's interesting. You know, I'm hoping he goes into retirement happy, and, you know, I'm glad he made a ton of money doing it. A lot of guys, they hang around too long, or, you know, where they do too many matches and they just, you know, they don't get to go away on their own terms. I'm glad he got to go away on his own terms.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you know, I think about Goldberg, and I think about, like, where does he stand in history? Like, realistically, you know, like,
that's a good question.
To me, he's not, you know, a Hogan or a Undertaker or a Cena, obviously. But he's also not a Kurt Angle or a Triple H, you know, or a Sting, you know. When I think of great wrestlers, I don't think Bill Goldberg. I don't really know where he lands. And, like, for me, the biggest thing that I remember is him taking his ball and going home in 2004 at WrestleMania. That's, to me, the memory that's imprinted in my mind. Granted, I didn't really keep up with his WCW career because I was too young at the time. But I thought he was a big deal when he came in WWE, and he took his ball and went home. So,
there was a lot of guys that took their ball and went home in that era, and they had good reason to. I mean, The Rock went to Hollywood. Steve Austin said, "Screw you, I'm flying home." And Brock Lesnar left that same match. You know, so I think a lot of those questions should be directed at Vince. It's like, why can't you keep your top stars around? What's going on? Yeah. You know, and I don't think that's ever been fairly discussed. I think Austin's tried to own up that, yeah, I did take my ball and go home. No, that guy gave his soul. I mean, that guy could have died in the ring at any time with all the neck problems he had, you know. But I think with Goldberg, I think the closest he's like maybe a modern day Andre the Giant, where he was an attraction. Mm-hmm. That's about the best way, I think, to put it. This is a guy who was the attraction of his era. You know, Lesnar was more of a regular, not on a second run, but, you know, Lesnar would probably go down as an attraction as well, where it's just two guys that when you needed a big pop and you needed a gate, calling Goldberg and Lesnar. And I think they kind of go down simultaneously that way.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, because I don't put Lesnar in the same tier as, you know, a Cena or, you know, an Austin or a Rock. You know, I think that's fair. I think they're definitely both attractions.
He was a much better wrestler than Goldberg. And he obviously had a much more sport. I mean, Goldberg was an NFL player. Lesnar, you know, dominated in MMA and was an NCAA champion, but in wrestling. But yeah, I think they were both mainly attractions, is how I see them. And I think maybe as the top attractions of their era, that's a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that. I definitely agree putting them in that position. Now, what are your thoughts on him going out challenging Gunther? Like, I thought it was good storytelling considering they started this like a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, it started on social media. They had a slow build, and it got more and more, and then they have the big build up. And I mean, I give a lot of credit to Bill for, you know, going out and putting Gunther over. Obviously, WWE's got big plans for him, and but I mean, I thought it was probably. I mean, if he's going to go out, I was glad to see he gave it to somebody else, especially in his hometown. It would have been interesting because it's like when Sting retired, you know, he wanted to put somebody over, but they really wanted him to go out because of Sting is just another level of human being and wrestler, and just to let him to go over, let him to go over on his way out, I think was a very special thing. And I think that was done right by AEW and everybody there. And I think, the way Goldberg handled this was done right.
Yeah, 100%. And I heard, there's some conspiracy theories, and this will lead us into our next little chat as well. There's some conspiracy theories that people think that Goldberg was scheduled to win, and that Seth Rollins was going to cash in his Money in the Bank on Goldberg and take the title. And we've learned since then that Seth Rollins has injured himself. I believe a knee injury. I think the speculation is some sort of torn MCL is what the rumors I'm hearing, or at least what I'm reading. I know Triple H said that he's scheduled to go in for an MRI later this week. So we'll have more information as to what his injury is later this week, hopefully. But, I do want to just, pass the mic over to you to discuss Seth Rollins, his injury, and how this really derails the company. If he's going to be out for 9 months, this derails a major storyline they've been building up to for the last 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I mean, we know Cena's at some point soon's dropping the title. The real top heel in the company's Rollins, Heyman, and that, the little dangerous alliance they've kind of formed with Breaker. And to me, it's just devastating for them. They've had a lot of injuries recently, and it's just devastating for Rollins. It took him years to recover from the Fiend feud, where they just booked him terribly. And he's had to go through like 2 or 3 different characters, and it's taken a long time. And I just feel bad for him. My dog sees somebody, but I just, it just, I feel bad for him. This is like the second or third knee injury he's had when it's come at a time in his career where it's like, oh man, this couldn't have been a worse. This is when big things were happening. But I think just see what happens. Just it's when they get the MRI, they'll know a lot more. Maybe this is a 3 to 6 month deal. Maybe it's longer. I mean, from Rollins' reactions in the ring and the way they ended the match, it didn't look like that. But hopefully he's all right. It's just a bummer when you see guys hurt in the ring. That's one thing we talking about with the hardcore matches and stuff like that. Just doing the normal everyday things. Even running the ropes and or doing a baseball slide, or so many things can go wrong. So adding more dangerous elements just makes it that much more harder on the performers. Like there's just more bad luck things that can happen when you start piling up those elements. And I think Rollins was a perfect example, and hopefully he's not hurt that long, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully it's a strain or something that can be easily rehabbed, and something that can keep him on TV at least. Because I think if it's something that he can rehab and he can still be on TV and people know he's injured, it kind of adds a little bit more intrigue as to when he cashes in, because we'll never really know when he's fully healed. But it's really bad timing, and I feel really bad because you can tell the last 5 years he's been the workhorse for that company. He's been the guy that shows up and he will do anything for them. And
he ate during Cody's run, he ate a lot of pins that Cody didn't have to win, so they could keep him over. They had him as the number 2 baby face. Then they had him as the number 2 heel. He's kind of the guy who they really strap a lot to. And it's just like with him getting hurt like this, you just kind of like, wow, man, it really shows just how important he was to that roster and to the show. And, we'll see what happens. Hopefully this is not as long as hopefully it's not a complete tear. Hopefully it's something he can repair in 6-7 months. I don't know. But, if it's a year long, that's just mentally, it's got to be terrible. He's already had this situation 2 or 3 times before. I think at least twice. I think he's had a knee injury. But hopefully he's not as severe as we think.
Yeah, I hope so too. But the other big news over the weekend when it comes to injuries and retirements is this Adam Cole situation. Adam Cole didn't say he's retiring, actually kind of avoided using the word retire. I think he wants to keep the door open for a possible return down the road, but a very emotional segment at AEW's All In where Adam Cole said he's going away for a little bit and he's dealing with some stuff. And it later came out that I guess it was a last minute decision that he just wasn't feeling well. And now the big word on the street is it's concussion related. So your thoughts?
As somebody who's suffered multiple concussions, I wouldn't wish them on anybody. He never seemed to be quite back to the level he was during the MJF feud and when he first came in. He got the concussion, I think it was in the Forbidden Door a couple of years ago. It was where he had the first, and he had another one after that. He also broke his leg jumping off the ramp. But it just shows you that, when you're dealing with brain injuries and concussions and things like that, you often don't know how bad they are until down the line. For him to pull himself off the card like that, I think this is pretty bad. I mean, it could be possible career threatening. That's the way the talk's been. I know the mood backstage was really somber. A lot of people were in shock. But at the same time, I mean, a lot of people think he may have just, maybe got a secondary concussion or something. It wouldn't have been secondary at this point because it didn't too far away from the primary concussion. But he may have had a recent concussion during a match. I just, it just shows you, your career can end in an instant in this business. I mean, Cole's always been the guy that's, Regal and Triple H saw him in the early 2010s and just said, in a couple years, we just want you to get some seasoning. We're going to bring you up. We think you're going to be this huge star. He goes to ROH. He gets over. He becomes part of the Bullet Club. He's part of the Elite. He ends up getting his break and going to NXT. He's the most over guy there. And then because of the changes and things like that with Laurinaitis and Pritchard running the company and Vince running there, they wanted to get rid of him as a manager. Or they wanted to make him a manager on the main event roster or something crazy like that. He comes into AEW, he's super over, it just, even when they tried to make him a heel, he was still a babyface. He's a great promo. He's done amazing work. I can't find anybody in the business has a bad word to say about the guy. He's a super nice guy. From everything I've heard, he's also a great worker, works hard. And it's just another thing of bad luck. It's just you just don't know, you're going to that ring. You don't know if it's going to be your last match sometimes, that's why, when you see things like in the hardcore instances and, I also think I think there's different danger levels that just about every kind of wrestling you can have. I mean, a lot of people point at the high spots in AEW. I think a lot of those are less dangerous than just how tightly plotted some of the matches are in WWE. You look at their injury rates, they're the same rate as AEW has, or they're on par with New Japan in the 2010s. And it's man, that style. I mean, look at the guys that have tried. I mean, Ibushi's taken 2.5 years to recover, and he's not the same. Okada took years to recover. Omega's had tons of problems. Naito can barely walk. Tanahashi he's had issues for 10 years. He's on his retirement tour. I mean, it's just, no matter what the style, there's a ton of risk. And, I hope he gets better. I think he's a guy who can be in there. He's going to be a creative force. If he wants a spot in the business, he's going to have one for his life. He's very smart. He knows the business. He gets along with people well. He's very creative. I mean, he can do anything. He can announce. He can, he can manage. I don't think he would be happy doing that. I think he's a wrestler at heart, and he always will be. But hopefully hopefully this comes out good for him. He just needs more sort of time off.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe he just does something kind of like Adam Copeland and Daniel Bryson, where you just take a couple of years off, really rehab, take good care of yourself, get yourself into shape. You can,
it depending on the severity. I've studied concussions and and all the CTE and a lot of that. But you can get better from these things. There are things you can do to improve your for good brain health that can help make things a little better as you go along. I mean, I had a really serious concussion in 7th grade, and I had a couple after that. And but through brain health and working out and good health and just trying to limit contact in my head and things like that, and giving my body time, I was able to improve a little bit. So I'm hoping that that happens with these guys. Obviously, they take a lot more abuse than I ever have. So, But good luck to him and good luck to Rollins. Hopefully they can bounce back from this. Obviously, I think Cole's situation's a lot more serious, but um, hopefully this will hopefully he'll be back. I mean, as you said, Danielson took a couple years off, got in the oxygen tent, and he hasn't seemed to have any major problems since. So
Yeah, I mean he's learning to take some time off as well. So I hope I hope everything's good. I hope Adam Cole's able to recover and at least have one more run on his own terms, and hopefully get a major title run. I really want to see him as a world champion on one of the big shows. Like I think it'd be a great way to tie up his career, and I wish him nothing but the
yeah,
best. And obviously, most importantly, I hope that he gets healthy. That to me, if we never see him wrestle again, but he's healthy and can live a long life, that to me is way more important than any
yeah,
little
absolutely.
you know. So with that being said, we do have some questions that we took over from Twitter. If you have questions for BJ or myself, you'll get a much better opinion out of BJ than you will myself. You can tweet them.
We'll find out
BJ.
about that.
We'll find out. Yeah, we'll see what the responses are here in just a second. Or the BJ Bethel Project at gmail.com. Send them over our way. The great thing about BJ is he also covers general sports and media as well. So if you have questions about the media landscape in general, feel free to ask those as well. I work in media as well, so I have some insight to it. And we're actually going to start with a media-based question from Robbie. The streaming business is very interesting. Appointment viewing is virtually gone, which is bad for sports. How can sport leagues, teams, / wrestling companies combat this?
I think the best example of combating that, which is basically back in our day, you had just 30 channels on cable, 40. Before that, you had 3 or 4 networks. You weren't competing against all the content ever created on the internet in everybody's hand. I think the best way to keep live events important is just to have, stars. I think Caitlin Clark's shown that in the WNBA with her effect. Even in a day and age where nobody should be watching TV, her ratings are through the roof. People go out of their way to see her at games. People go out of the way to watch her on TV. I think you just have to keep your sports compelling. I think you just have to keep it. I think, in this day and age where everything's so political, we have a culture war going on. And this I'm not saying one side's better than the other in this argument, but it's just like, everything everybody wants to split everybody down the middle one way or the other. And in sports is kind of a way you can get away from that. And I think that's maybe one part of the reason why it still does so well in the ratings. And I think to do that, you just have to have, compelling matchups, and you got to have compelling people doing it. And Caitlin Clark's the greatest example of that in the world. WNBA, 2-3 years ago, where were the ratings at? Where are they at now? I mean, she's been a gold mine to the league. Obviously, those political aspects have come after her as well, but it still hasn't chased people away because it's all about watching her, what she can do on the court. And I think as long as you're putting on a good product and you're wrestling or you're doing that and you're creating, characters people want to see, like a Hangman Page or Swerve or Cody Rhodes or Roman Reigns, I think you're going to be doing great. I think TNA, if you watch, behind Santana and Mustafa Ali and the guys there, Joe Hendry, I think they've done a great job. So to me, it's just, having characters that people want to watch and pay to watch and will be appointment viewing.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, if you think about in the last couple of years, for myself, I've tuned in the most when the storylines have made the most amount of sense. When the storylines have been the hottest. I was super CM Punk return to AEW got me back into watching wrestling again. You need stars, you need compelling stories, you need compelling matches. People, as an example, to take a boxing term, I don't remember who it was, who Oscar De La Hoya was facing, but he was facing somebody. It was one of the big matches that he had back in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And my mom, who would never buy pay-per-view, she refused to buy pay-per-view. She spent whatever, like $50 on a pay-per-view to watch Oscar De La Hoya fight this fight, because it was a compelling story, compelling match. You had a star in De La Hoya, and whoever the other person was a egotistical star as well. If you can create that kind of hype, you're going to get people to tune in. Just like Cody and Roman's 2. People tuned in because they wanted to see Cody finish the story.
Yeah.
You know, so I think if you create compelling stories and compelling stars, you're going to have people tune in. And just like people tune in every time the Lakers and the Golden State Warriors would face off, because it's a huge rivalry. On that same note, Ari Rosenbaum says, "Do you think there's too many streaming services? Will there be a merger of services? Which streaming service will be merged out or closed?" I have some thoughts on this after I hear yours.
Ari Rosenbaum, one of the great retirement lawyers in the United States, by the way. I would say, I think there's going to definitely be a lot of mergers. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's been rumors. Sony, I mean, I had more little rumors, but Sony's said to be interested in looking at Warner Brothers Discovery. And I think you're going to see more things where companies kind of split up. There's really kind of a, John Oren explained it this way, where you have the main streamers like Netflix and Amazon Prime, and you had the ones that were battling with them, and they're now like, okay, we can't compete with Netflix, so we're going to compete with our niche, with our IPs, with our product. And Warner Brothers Discovery is well positioned for that. I think there's going to be a lot of mergers and purchases ahead, especially with NBCU splitting up. They're splitting their channels from their streaming services. Same with Warner Brothers Discovery. That's supposed to be done in 2026. I wouldn't be surprised if they sold off TV stations before then, and if somebody didn't buy the streaming company. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But I think definitely there's going to be definitely a lot of shakeups. I think at some point you're going to see either the SEC or the FCC step in and say, okay, what are we doing here? Under the Trump administration, I don't know. They're very friendly to kind of the bigger companies and the conglomerates. Lena Khan from the last administration was trying to attack those a little bit more to give more, because they say she saw it as a threat to competition. But I think that, to me, the big thing is just, it's just becoming, to me, it's like, when do they start making money on this stuff, and how bad does it get for the TV side? Because there's always going to be a TV audience. It's realizing how much that's going to remain and not. Right now, they're down about 50% of their homes they were in 2019. That's going to be a big tell. That's not going to completely go away. The value of the stations isn't going to completely disappear, even though they're kind of given junk status by people that cover the media covering the media. But also that, and it's like a lot of the streamers aren't going to be able to keep going ahead. And I think a big problem there is just like, and this is something I hear over and over and over. It's like, I bought Netflix because I didn't want to watch ads. I got Amazon Prime because I didn't want to watch ads. I got Hulu because I didn't want to watch ads. I just wanted to watch the show. I'm paying more for that than I was for getting HBO on cable. Well, guess what? There are more and more advertising. I mean, the Raw episodes have been deluged with advertising. So to me, that's going to be a big question about what it is. Are they really delivering for their customers? That's another question to come out of this. And, as far as I'm concerned, I think the more streamers, the better. At least right now. I think you're also going to see a thing come at some point where they gather together and they kind of put together their own services, and we're back to where we were with cable. I think this crisis we're seeing right now was completely created by the media companies. I think they owned a spigot on this. It wasn't like with print newspapers and music in the early 2000s with Napster. This was definitely a problem. This is definitely a self-created problem. They did not have to move into streaming and in the IP direction that they have. And they did anyway. Who knows why? Because it was the cool thing to do, is often the excuse in Wall Street. Exactly. But yeah, it's all after greed, because they saw Netflix's IP and they decided, oh, we want some of that. Well, guess what? Look what it's got you. You're back to where we started, where basically you're going to have service fees for channels, and instead of that, you'll be paying them on an app, and then you'll just have one app that has a bunch of apps on it.
Yeah.
How different is that than a cable box? It's not. So
it's a different barrier to entry. And I agree. I think the company that's most likely to be able to put some of that together, in my opinion, is Amazon. I would not be surprised if Amazon Prime becomes a hub where you go in. The subscription cost for Amazon Prime is probably going to skyrocket for this. But I would not be surprised. Your Amazon Prime subscription gets you Hulu, Disney Plus, and Peacock, you know, and maybe Netflix tries to acquire, you know, a couple of other streamers. I do think there are too many streamers right now. I mean, just looking at this right now, okay, I know Netflix's subscriber count is in like the 200 millions, I believe.
Yeah,
I'm gonna look at it now.
I think that's globally.
Yeah, 301 million subscribers for Netflix globally. HBO Max has 117 million paid subscribers globally. Disney Plus has 125 million paid subscribers. Then you have
Yeah,
Peacock with 41 million paid subscribers,
yeah,
and Peacock last year lost $1 billion. Paramount Plus
yeah. They're
subscriber,
splitting
I
up.
would, yeah. I don't see this being a long term wise. I don't see this being a profitable business for the networks to have their own streaming app. I just don't. I know
No,
Fox is launching one later this year. And so I believe that the first company that comes up with a revenue model that gets all these under, or as many of these under one umbrella for the least expensive cost possible, is going to be the winner. You
I
know,
believe
and
that.
how or why Netflix hasn't tried doing this, or why Amazon hasn't tried doing this, I do not know.
Yeah,
But I do hope, because like, and the thing that sucks is like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you just needed a Netflix and a Hulu subscription. You had everything.
yeah,
Now you need to have 7 or 8 different subscriptions.
yeah,
That, or honestly, if side note, real quick, other thing is, if one of the telecommunication companies, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, if they're able to bundle all of the subscription, you know, streamers under their, as part of their platform, I think that would be a win. If AT&T or T-Mobile or Verizon, and Verizon's trying to do that, but they're doing it in a weird way. But like, your cell phone plan comes with Disney, Netflix, Hulu, you know, Apple TV, and all
yeah.
these other ones. That would be amazing. That would be amazing.
I think right now they're using that almost as a thing to try to beat other service providers in the market, but they ought to look at that as more of an opportunity to just get into the streaming game.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, yeah, there are too many, and it's just the price. And you add them up together, we're way over. This was about supposedly making it cheaper than buying cable and having to pay all these service fees to ESPN, which was like 50% of what your cable bill was, even if you didn't watch ESPN. It was about getting to where the a la carte kind of services people were wanting to get, where you didn't have to buy all these channels to get these 2 or 3 channels. And to me, they've kind of missed the boat on that completely. Like, just because now there's just so many apps, there's so many platforms. Okay, if I want to watch Yellowstone, I got to get Paramount, or I got to hope they sell it over or they license it over to Hulu for a year, you know, or I
Well,
got to
no,
hope
so
it works like
that's
this.
that's even more confusing, because Yellowstone's owned by Universal, so it
Yes.
airs on CBS, but then it streams on Peacock.
Yeah. Before that, it was on Paramount. It was on Paramount Network. And it's like just trying to keep track of it. It's like, what if you're a Friends fan? Like, Netflix paid $1 billion for Friends or something like that a few years ago. It's like, where are they at now? I don't know. And it's just mass. It's confusion. It's like, it's even Googling and trying to figure out, okay, I want to see where this particular movie's at. It's probably going to bring back maybe downloading like off iTunes and stuff, where if, at least when it comes to movies, you know, instead of
That'd be nice.
paying, I want to get Thunderbolts, or I want to get Superman, or I want to see Oppenheimer. Instead of trying to find the streaming service that provides it, I'm just going to buy it flat out off iTunes or the Google Store, or even if that's still around. It's just trying to find a way to buy it, and download it or go get the hard copy.
Yeah.
It's just because with inflation and with everything else going on in the market, I mean, there's been a lot of unpredictability in the market for a while, just with world events. We're still coming out of COVID. We're 3-4 years out, but we're still kind of coming out of that. Inflation's still real high. These are a lot of questions that need to be answered. And, when it comes down to it, one of the first things you're going to cut in a household budget's the streaming apps.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. And I think the last kind of idea that I'm gonna throw out there for anyone who listens to this is, if I were the movie studios, I would on the movie website have a spot that says rent or purchase here, and you click
Yeah.
on it and it takes you to some sort of service that they're going to get the most amount of money for somebody renting it for a week or whatever. That I think would solve, like, because then if I want to watch Oppenheimer, I can go to oppenheimermovie.com and it's going to tell me click here, or
Yeah.
even there, like click here to stream. At least that way it'll be a little bit, a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Disney Plus during the pandemic experimented with charging, I think, like $10 or $20, for their movies, and it did pretty well on that front. So, last question for this episode, and I think this one's going to be a big one. Jimmy Andrews, do you foresee the Grant case making it all the way to public court rather than a settlement?
Right now it appears headed that way. I mean, Grant said from the beginning, and her representatives have said at the beginning, this is going all the way. Now, does it
Yeah.
really do that? I don't know. I think a lot of it depends on just what she gets offered, how the case looks at so far. And right now, she's been winning about everything. She had a big win last week in the Colker case, which was related to this and discovery. They're going to have to provide discovery in the bill of discovery case in Connecticut. I think a lot of, we'll see what happens moving forward. We have the arbitration hearing coming up. WWE's got some arguments for that on their side. Same with Vince McMahon. I think John Laurinaitis flipping was probably changed the entire game on that. But I right now, I mean, after the arbitration hearing comes, then we'll be able to say, because if they force him into arbitration, it's over. But if they don't force him into arbitration, and this goes as far as Grant wants it to go, I mean, they may sit him down and do a settlement. But I know Grant's side wants to depose about 45 people. And that's going to be a lot of people in the C-suite. That's going to be a lot of people that know a lot of things about Vince. It's going to be Vince himself. And they want that out in the open. They see this as a company-wide problem. They see this as a culture problem there. And it's going to be, I think, to get them not to go forward, it's going to take a lot. And right now, with the way things have been going, with Grant seems to be winning all the battles here, I bet WWE and TKO and Vince would love to settle this thing. I think they would pay probably tons to settle this thing, probably record numbers to settle this thing, but I don't think that's going to happen. Grant wants to take this all the way. And, and as long as as long as they get through the arbitration hearing, I think they're going to be in a position to do that.
Yeah, 100%. The only way I see this not going to court is if it gets shut down by a judge, or the settlement is one of those things where you just cannot say no to it, because there is a risk. I believe, there is a risk that, a jury may rule in Grant's favor, but could also turn around and give her $1, so there is always that risk as well. And so, at some point, I think she's going to have to sit down and say, we've got a lot of this out in the open. I'm sure she can probably get a settlement that includes the NDA no longer being, enforceable. And then taking that pay cut, which she deserves every dime of whatever is given to her, and offered from the shit that she's gone through, and
the stuff. And if I haven't seen any refutations of the evidence really that are specific, if the stuff in the complaint's true, wow. I mean, that it's just indescribable, the horrors that's happened to this poor woman and her courage for going through with this. And I mean, this isn't the first time we've heard stories like this coming out of wrestling or WWE. But I think, it's all going to come down to the arbitration hearing. I think federal law, right, it doesn't address specifically this instance, but it does address, they have gone out of their way to ban NDAs in cases of sexual harassment or assault in the workplace. But those are more towards the, standard filing NDAs and arbitration agreements you sign when you're hired on to someplace. Like everybody gets when they go in for orientation, you sign a big packet of stuff and you sign something. Well, instead of going to court, you agree to go to arbitration if something happens. And that's what those laws are aimed at. Jessica Rosenbaum and Lawyers for Vince are saying this doesn't cover the Grant case because the alleged sexual misconduct and the sex trafficking and sex assault happened afterward, and they signed the NDA afterward. So I don't know how the court. My guess is the way the courts have been doing anything over the last several years, the precedent has been that they've really been battling against using NDAs to silence any kind of sexual assault and sexual harassment. So to me, that's going to be a big decider in the arbitration case. And the way things have ruled for Grant so far, I'd be really surprised if it doesn't move forward from the arbitration hearing. Like if WWE wins this, I'll be surprised. Just because I think it's kind of gotten, I wouldn't be, it wouldn't be unexpected because, they got their right to hear in court too. They got their own case to make. But at the same time, this kind of goes away from the direction that Congress on both sides and judges on both sides have gone in court. And to me, that's kind of where the path's going, where you're not allowed to silence things with NDAs or arbitration hearings or make people go through these different legal processes through work to address what are essentially criminal acts. And also another thing is that Grant has in her favor in a civil case is in a criminal case, you got to have beyond a reasonable doubt. That's 99% of the evidence has to show that beyond a reasonable doubt, that person's guilty. In a civil case, it's a preponderance, which is 51%. And that's a lot easier level to get to than in a criminal case. And, so for her to, if she wants this stuff heard and made in a public hearing, she's really got an advantage there. She's really got a lot going for her in that direction. And I think, a lot of this arbitration hearing coming up is going to be pretty important. It's paused right now, but while they discuss whether they're going to allow discovery ahead of arbitration, but, for the arbitration hearing, but it's going to be, that's going to be the big factor. That's going to be the big thing. If they allow them to proceed after that and they deny WWE and Vince, this is probably going to go all the way if Grant has her way.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, if the allegations are true, which I believe they are, Vince deserves every bit of the negative press and whatever is being thrown at him. And I think he's lucky that Donald Trump became president because it paused, in my opinion, the federal investigation into him.
Yeah, Trump has really clamped down on the Southern District in New York. That was the Manhattan office was the one that was really going after all the billionaires and big money players. That was like basically the only office in the DOJ. It was going after really big white collar criminals. The DOJ has really softened back on that since the 2008 crisis. So, but that's been softened a lot. Trump got convicted in that court. He don't like it. There's been a lot of changes in that place. And I don't, I have people tell me, that's just fiction that Trump will get involved with this. I've never gotten word that the criminal case is over yet. I believe it probably is, just because Trump has done, he's worked with Eric Adams. He's been working with other people. They've changed a lot of people over. He's got a tight relationship with Linda. And Vince's side has come out and said, that during when they made their SEC settlement over the non-disclosed settlements with, all these different women, that, all the federal cases are done now. But I've not heard that from anyone else, so I don't have it for sure. I don't know if there's a criminal case really going on or not, because I've not heard it from anybody officially or unofficially from SDNY. And I haven't, and as far as Grant's side knows, the criminal case is still ongoing. So that's another big factor in all this. But like you said, Trump's another part in this. It's like, I don't think he would want it let out if he tried to, push them to not pursue this. I don't think he would like it let out that he was the one behind it. But he's showed this kind of muscle before and other factors, and it's something we're gonna have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, that's all we got for this episode. I do know that we're gonna record something here in just a second about TNA, so keep an eye out for that over on YouTube and Substack and Twitter. BJ Bethel, you can find his work over at sescoops.com, as well as what was your Substack?
bbethel.substack.com. And if you can't tell, I got on the Substack trend kind of late if I'm picking that name.
Hey,
but yeah, bbethel.substack.com. I got some interviews and some articles over there too. So thanks, guys.
Awesome. Well, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter. All that information will be in the description of this episode as well. BJ, let's take a 2-minute break here real quick and then come back and talk TNA.